to get whatever powers ruled the world on your side, to keep safe. Many of them lived one drought away from starvation, and you just didn't mess around with the world like that.
One of the things I love about Greek myth is it never lets people off the hook. It never says, this happened because the gods made it happen. It's our fault, if we can just understand why. It's sort of I think, a difficult world to exist in.
En un mundo lleno de dificultades, la gente frecuentemente busca un héroe, alguien que traiga redención a una vida frecuentemente golpeada por la adversidad. Algunos creen que un niño nacido de un dios griego y una mujer terrenal presagia la aparición de Cristo. ¿Estaba esto destinado a suceder? Cuando regresemos, dos de las más grandes figuras de la mitología griega y cómo iluminaron el pensamiento de los griegos antiguos con el debate entre destino y libre albedrío. Una de las más famosas figuras en la mitología griega puede posiblemente haber ayudado a marcar el camino para un suceso posterior, trascendental en la historia de la humanidad. Heracles, mejor conocido como Hércules, nació porque el gran dios Zeus se prendó de una bella mortal. Ella, sin embargo, era una fiel esposa. Zeus tomó la forma del esposo de ella y así logró poseerla. El estupor aumentó por el hecho de que Zeus estaba casado con una de sus propias hermanas, Hera.
The notion that the gods are not always ethical, not always honest, is also one that makes sense when you think about it. And the Greeks seem to have been comfortable with it for many centuries. It makes sense because if the gods are humans, but better off somehow, more strong, more powerful, immortal, they never have to take the consequences of anything they do, whereas humans do. The burden of acting ethically, of thinking about consequences, falls on human beings, not on gods.
Hera fue incapaz de descargar su ira sobre Zeus. En una acción completamente característica de los dioses griegos, ella enfocó su rabia en el niño nacido de la infidelidad de su esposo. Heracles fue tal vez el héroe griego más famoso y una de las figuras más importantes de la mitología griega. Incluso en su infancia, Heracles fue dotado de una extraordinaria fuerza. Hera envió serpientes mortales a su cuna y Heracles las estranguló a ambas.
Many of the Greek heroes did in fact have one divine parent and one mortal parent. More generally, a hero was a man of more than normal strength, who was somehow marked out for a life of achievement, but also a life of enormous difficulty. They were very difficult to integrate into society precisely because of their great capacities.
La vengativa Hera continuó persiguiendo al hijo ilegítimo de su esposo durante toda la vida, provocándole periódicamente ataques de ira y locura. Profundamente arrepentido de los asesinatos y otros crímenes cometidos durante estos ataques, Heracles toma grandes responsabilidades como penitencia, que frecuentemente es el asesinato de tiranos y monstruos. Al final de su vida, a Heracles se le concede la inmortalidad y es llevado por su padre, Zeus, a vivir con él en el monte Olimpo. De esta manera, la historia de Heracles pudo haber abierto el camino para el apóstol Pablo, quien trajo la palabra de una nueva fe a los griegos varios siglos más tarde.
They had a story of a son of God, Heracles, who suffered and died and then went through an apotheosis, himself went up to Olympus, And so the story of another son of God who suffered and died and went to heaven would not be all that unfamiliar. In the same way, the notion that a God could take on human form and look exactly like one of us was completely acceptable to a pagan Greek audience. And so early Christianity proceeded in Greece and struck roots in Greece quite easily.
Not quite a Christ figure, but elements of that, because it was someone who their toil and suffering and labor and loyalty achieved divinity.
A pesar de ser tan singular, Heracles es solo uno de los muchos héroes que han habitado entre los griegos. También existen Aquiles y Ulises, grandes guerreros de la guerra de Troya, y Teseo, entre cuyas glorias se cuentan el haber matado al temido Minotauro, la criatura que hacía festines con la carne de los jóvenes griegos. Pero los héroes no tenían que ser crías de los dioses, ni siquiera necesariamente heroicos en términos actuales, es decir, correr graves riesgos por el bien de otros. Para los antiguos griegos, un héroe era alguien que rompía los lazos de la vida ordinaria sin importar las consecuencias.
It's not necessary that a hero be descended from a god or a goddess. It's not necessary that a hero even do something good in life. And so achievement is more doing something extraordinary and being recognized for it. Now, the extraordinary thing that a hero could do could even be killing a number of the enemy or killing people in his own community in such a strange fashion that the gods have to be consulted. So the heroes are dangerous, unusual individuals, extraordinary but not necessarily extraordinarily good.
Heroes really are a projection of what it is to be human on a large scale. They really focus both the great potential of human beings at their best and also the vulnerabilities of humans.
Otro héroe inverosímil es Edipo, quien mató a su padre y se casó con su madre. Habiendo cumplido su terrible destino, Edipo se cegó a sí mismo en busca de la redención. Es una historia perdurable que habla del lado más oscuro de los sentimientos entre padres e hijos.
I think there definitely was a thread of Greek culture and of Greek mythology which was interested in the conflict between father and son. Obviously, Sigmund Freud saw this and picked up on it in the story of the Oedipus and the Oedipus complex. And I think there was a thread of generational conflict that the Greeks actually feared but recognized as real at the same time.
De la historia de Edipo y sus padres surge otra interrogante. ¿Está predeterminada la vida de los humanos? ¿O tiene el hombre el poder de ejercer el libre albedrío?
Oedipus is someone who, for no reason ever given, has this fate that he will kill his father and marry his mother. When Oedipus has realized that he is not the son of the king of Corinth, as he thought he was, he says, I count myself the child of chance. And by chance, he means something very random. There is no plan. By the end of the play, it's turned out that everything he has ever done has fit into a plan. And that if he is the child of chance, it's chance in the sense that closely allied to fate.
He, Oedipus, the man, made choices. When he learned he was going to kill his father and marry his mother, he fled his home, not knowing he was adopted. And of course meets his father on the road and kills him and arrives in the city and marries his mother. He chose to leave his home. He did a terrible thing, but he didn't do it trying to do evil. And fate didn't make him do it.
La cuestión del destino de una persona contra el papel de libre albedrío fue de tal importancia para los antiguos griegos que ellos personificaron el destino en la forma de 3 diosas.
When you read the poetry of Homer, it seems that it goes 2 ways. On the one hand, the Fates are a group of 3 women, Clotho, Lachesis, and Atropos. Their names mean the weaver, the allotter, and not turning back. And they weave a thread for each person's life when that person is born and determine when that person's life is going to end. On the other hand, we see in Homer's poetry that fate is a power above the gods. The gods bow to fate in several instances.
You can look at the story of Oedipus and talk about fate. Was he fated to kill his father and marry his mother? Yes. What does that mean? Does that mean he didn't have any free will? No, it doesn't mean that. It means that's what was going to happen.
The Greeks had a complicated view of how the world worked. On the one hand, the gods controlled a lot of actions of human beings or had an effect upon it. But yet, the humans also could control their own individual destinies and call a lot of the shots. So there's this funny relationship between what the gods control and what humans control. And you know what? They loved this ambiguity.
De este modo, los antiguos griegos llegaron a un acuerdo con el hecho de que no había garantías en la vida. Algunas de sus preocupaciones parecen persistentemente familiares hoy en día.
This consciousness that the Greeks have that you cannot have too many generations on the earth at the same time is even expressed in a myth, the myth of the beginning of the Trojan War, which says that the earth was burdened with too many people and cried out to Zeus to relieve her burden. And so Zeus invented the Trojan War to get rid of a lot of people.
Al regreso, en Dioses y Diosas, las faltas e imperfecciones de las divinidades griegas y por qué los dioses imperfectos tenían un sentido perfecto para los antiguos griegos. Las historias de los dioses y diosas de los antiguos griegos son eternas. Todavía tienen significado para nosotros. Entre las deidades había 2 grupos de adorables hermanas que moraban en el monte Olimpo, las gracias y las musas. Las gracias otorgaban belleza, encanto y gratitud al mundo mortal. Las musas tuvieron un impacto muy profundo sobre cómo desde entonces las distintas generaciones han transmitido las historias de los dioses y las sagas de una era pasada a través de la tradición oral. Desde su elevada morada, ellas descendían a la tierra para enseñar la historia, la astronomía y las artes.
Each one of the 9 muses is associated with a particular subject, usually concerning the arts and sciences. For instance, Clio, the proclaimer, is the one that is associated with epic poetry and is the muse of history. Now, the muses are very well known because we have words like museum, the seat of the muses, that are in contemporary English, and of course Greek.
Greek stories are about those things that people regard as important. They wouldn't have persisted if they weren't. I mean, if stories are going to last and be retold for several thousand years, there must be something in them that has meaning for the people who hear them across generations.
La evidencia de lo divino estaba en todas partes. Para los griegos, los dioses eran tan reales como los campos que ellos labraban y las familias que levantaban.
The number of little shrines that would be all around a city, the number of dedications to gods in big sanctuaries, really does speak to a pretty strong belief in them. Life was felt to be fairly precarious, and you needed to do everything you could to get whatever powers ruled the world on your side, to keep safe.